Today on Feral America, a woman disappears off a cruise ship. She claims that Epstein trafficked her and her daughter, and that her daughter was killed by the government. Just another day in Feral America. I'm Stevie,
I'm M.
and welcome to Feral America. So, this is the Jessica Collins story, which I honestly just learned about by watching your Instagram. Can you let us know what that is? And then we'll jump into the story.
So my Instagram and TikTok are lesbian mom shows you how.
And I'm Buster Talks, TOKS, like TikTok, but I'm only on Instagram. So don't let the name fool you. Um, some of you may have heard of this story before, but we have a little exclusive scoop, which I'm going to let Em tell you about.
So this woman, Jessica Collins, she said that she was trafficked by Epstein for 17 years. And in 2019, she filmed, it's sort of like a dead man switch video. She says in the video that in case anything happens to her, to please keep publishing this video. And that's how I found it. I just came across it online. And she also claims that her daughter was murdered by the government. And last night, her daughter's father reached out to me and he wanted to discuss what had happened with his daughter. So I think you have the
Oh
video,
my God.
right? Right, Stevie?
Yes. Yes, I have the video. And so let's watch that. And then we'll get into what you talked about with the father.
I am a real victim of Jeffrey Epstein. The reason you don't see me in the news is because I am a real victim. Real victims are not being represented by attorneys or in the media. I was trafficked to Jeffrey Epstein and Andrew Windsor by Deborah Palfrey, the DC madam. I was a student at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. in 2002. I answered an ad in the city paper. The ad was ambiguous. Deborah was professional. I thought I was going on a real job interview. Instead, I was drugged and raped by Paul Hung. I tried to tell Deborah what happened, but something she said made me realize she knew what happened. At that point, they had my driver's license, and I did not know what to do or where to go for help. At that point, I was driven by Jonathan Luna to the Bethesda Marriott on Pook's Hill, where Jeffrey Epstein and Andrew Windsor drugged and raped me. I have tried to get help. I called the police. I was abducted for 2 weeks. I was moved from Washington, D.C. by Ed Norris, who was the superintendent of the Maryland State Police. He is now an actor on the show The Wire and has a radio show. My name is Jessica Collins. I live in Virginia. Today is September the 3rd, 2019. If anything happens to me, it's because this information is true, and I have a lot more information about who I was trafficked to in the government, people who are in the White House today. If you could redistribute this video, please save it and redistribute it. If anything happens to me, at least I have this out. I have been threatened. My car was disabled by a government employee when the Jeffrey Epstein news broke. I have been without a vehicle for 40 days. I don't know what else to say. Please save this video. Please redistribute it. Please try and spread it. There's no way that this is going to get out there in the media unless we, the American people, do the work. The government is involved, and I was trafficked for nearly 17 years. Please try to help by redistributing this, tweeting it, talking about it. I'll do everything that I can. Thank you for listening. I hope that together we can get to the bottom of this and hold the criminals accountable.
So that's intense when you watch it.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, what a story. So, one thing, after Epstein was arrested in 2019, a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
started kind of coming out of the woodwork. So,
Mm-hmm.
what makes Jessica's story unique from other people's?
In her lawsuit that she filed in January 2025, she names a former president as having participated in trafficking of her daughter as well as her. So,
Ah, well, we've seen some former presidents pop up in the Epstein files. Is this
and
someone
current
that was
ones.
mentioned in those?
He's not mentioned. He's not mentioned in the
Yes.
Epstein files. But she provided a video online as well of a person, a young woman that she says is her daughter with this former president. Just to give you a little additional background on this. So she published that video in 2019. January 2025, she files the lawsuit. And then in September 2025, she takes a cruise to Bonaire, tells the staff that she doesn't want to be found, she disembarks, and no one's seen her since. So
And she left a tip, right?
she left a tip, and then a week later, Customs and Immigration said that they have her, but no one's seen her since. So we don't know what's happened to Jessica. And
Wow.
I asked her daughter's father about that as well.
So tell us about this because this is a brand new scoop that nobody else has. Um, so how did her father reach out to you? How did he find you? And what did you guys talk about?
Well, so he found me on Instagram and TikTok, and I verified his identity. I asked him to jump through so many hoops last night to verify his identity, and he willingly did everything I asked him to do. So it's no question that it's Jessica Collins's daughter. Her name is Aisha. That this is Aisha's father, no question. And he gave me a timeline of everything that had happened with Aisha. Now, you and I had discussed that Aisha actually died of an overdose in February 2017, and he had a lot. He had a lot to say about that. He's very, very, very upset.
Why don't you go over the timeline a little bit, and so that we can kind of start piecing this together?
Sure. Okay. So, he wants to be referred to as the father or dad. So I'm not going to use a name for him, but from 1996 to 2000, dad is partner to Jessica Collins, and they live in Florida. And then Aisha is born in September 1998, so a couple of years into their relationship. Then in 2000, Jessica leaves Florida and she takes Aisha with her. But shortly thereafter, like 2001, 2002, Jessica apparently is in some kind of perilous situation, and Aisha's aunt comes to get her and brings her back to Florida. Okay, so around 2002, Aisha's back living in Florida. Jessica's on her own. She's got multiple problems. She's in some sort of bad situation. And then in 2008, Jessica, out of the blue, returns to Florida. She takes Aisha with her. And what's interesting is At that point, Aisha is 10 years old when Jessica takes her from Florida. The dad says she was doing very well. She was very happy. She was living with family. The kid was doing great. Jessica takes her 10-year-old daughter, and that in Jessica's lawsuit is the age when she says that her daughter started having encounters with this former president.
Should we watch a little clip of
Sure.
the
Let's
video
do it.
showing her with that former president?
Let's do it.
This black hole operation that is behind the cover-up in the news. This video is not a deep fake. It is an actual video of my daughter, at 10 years old, being beaten and raped by Joe Biden. Aisha Kathleen Zucabia Collins is the underage victim of Jeffrey Epstein's whose murder in 2017 caused the cover-up in the news. As Aisha's mother, my ability and willingness to name names, after Jeffrey Epstein and his accomplices sex trafficked us and murdered her, is the reason the Jeffrey Epstein cover-up exists, and why we are kept from public knowledge. They are
That might not be the former president that people were expecting to see. Let's go on with the timeline. So this was around 2008 that
Around 2008.
video reportedly took place. Okay.
And
We'll
then
say allegedly for
allegedly that's a former president. Let's say that. Dad says circa 2011 he signed away custody to Aisha's aunt in Maryland. And if you look at news clippings of what happened when Aisha died, Jessica says that Aisha started using heavy drugs when she was in Maryland. So her drug use started around that time. And then sometime between 2011, when she moved to Maryland to live with her aunt, she moved out of Maryland and to Portland, Oregon. And then she passed away in Portland, Oregon in February 2017.
So why does Jessica believe that it was murder?
Aisha had purchased a synthetic opioid called U47700 on the dark net. And it was mailed to her via USPS from another location to Oregon, and she OD'd. So I think there's a few different ways people look at something as being murder, and that's kind of like the issue with her dad, and that's why he wanted to contact me. He wanted to see if we could straighten some of this out. So you can look at it as murder in terms of the government was behind the whole thing and got those drugs to Aisha, and she died taking them. And did she take them willingly or not? Right? But there's no evidence that she did not take these drugs willingly. So another way to look at it as a possible murder is all drug dealers are selling unsafe products and people die, and so they have murdered them. And one of the news articles regarding Aisha's death actually says that everyone in the chain of custody is liable for Aisha's death. So that's another way of looking at it as murder. The third way is because Aisha was so mentally compromised because of her alleged trafficking experiences, that level of being disturbed, mentally unwell, it's like a constructive murder, because whoever participated in the Epstein ring and put her through that was the actual, proximate cause for her ODing, right? So they're actually the murderers because they did that to her. She did this to herself. So there's like those three different angles regarding her being murdered. But what her dad had said was he had no idea about anything else other than it was just a straight up OD, that his daughter was taking drugs and she OD'd. He didn't have any idea about the possibilities of trafficking. And what he did was he took the time to line up the dates.
So that must have been a shock for him to have this estranged daughter pop up all of a sudden dead, and then years later find out there was so much more to it.
He's very, very upset, and he blames Jessica Collins for it because she uprooted their daughter from a safe environment in Florida. And it seems, if you look at the timeline, right, she took her out of Florida in 2008. And then that's when she was allegedly trafficked to the former president. So it looks almost like she intentionally uprooted her to traffic her to the former president.
And there's a connection there too with the DC madam, right?
Right. So the DC madam was Jessica's primary trafficker. And the DC madam was the segue into Epstein. And it was one giant trafficking ring. This is what Jessica alleges in her video. So, I mean, we got the DC, right? We've got that Epstein, and Jessica says Epstein and Windsor, Andrew Windsor, former Prince Andrew. I don't even know if I can say the R word on here. Let's say graped her in DC. She says she was a student at Catholic University in DC. So the whole DC connection is there. The question is, was Jessica telling the truth about the former president? Is that video of that former president? Is that video of that former president and Jessica's daughter? Is it a video of Jessica's daughter and somebody who's not the former president? But you know, that whole DC connection's there. It's there. So
Right. Other thing too, I know a lot of people might be saying, well, in 2008, wasn't Epstein in prison? Well, he was on work release while he was in prison. And so he was allowed to leave every day, and he just had to come back and sleep at the prison. So his crime still continued after and while he was first arrested. So I know that when I first heard the timeline on this, I was like, wait, I think it was 2009 that he was finally arrested, and or he only served a short time, so I think it was
incarcerated in
2007.
2009 for a short period. But don't forget, it's
Yeah,
a ring, right? It's a ring.
well, and one thing that's fascinating to me is how interconnected these webs really are. You and I are gonna be doing an upcoming episode on some interesting islands, and one of the things we came across in that is, um, another trafficking ring, and, that there are other connections. Surprisingly, Andrew Windsor Mountbatten, or Mountbatten Windsor, is also in that ring, so I feel like he's kind of a key player in a lot of these rings, so I'm glad that at least the UK is doing something about, his crimes. I hope that the United States can follow, but I don't really expect it given the current administration.
I don't expect it either. But the takeaway from what you just said is, so there's several key players, right? So if one is out of commission, like Epstein's in prison temporarily, doesn't mean that Les Wexner wasn't maybe doing something, that former Prince Andrew wasn't perhaps maybe doing something, that Ghislaine wasn't maybe doing something. So it wasn't like, Jeffrey Epstein was the only person who was I don't even want to use the word working. I don't know. Handling these types of matters, but he had helpers. He had helpers, right? So I feel really bad for Aisha's dad because he just wants everybody to know that she was a really good kid and she was solid. And then apparently Jessica dragged their daughter into a situation she never should have been a part of. And I mean, he's distraught over it, and I can't blame him for that because I'm a mom. As being a mom shows you how. So I'm a mom, and I would never do anything even remotely like that to my son. Like, you could cut off my arms and my legs, and I still would be like, nope. Or I'd perhaps take matters into my own hand and remove me from the situation. So we don't know if Jessica was pressured into getting her daughter and bringing her daughter into that situation with accompanying threats. It's we don't know how Aisha was brought into that situation. We just know that when Jessica took Aisha from her happy home in Florida, that is the same year that she says Aisha was trafficked to the former president. And that would be approximately 6 years after Jessica said her trafficking experience started, because she's saying her trafficking experience started in 2002 and everything happened with Aisha around 2008.
Well, it's
So,
amazing to me how often this seems to be the story of how kids end up getting trafficked, is that it starts with their parents. It's
mhm,
really like, I'm not a parent, but I've been a teacher for 20 years, and
mhm,
I would, I think of like the worst, the most annoying student I ever had or whatever. Like, I would not sell that kid into trafficking, and
mhm,
it's not even
mhm,
my kid. So I
mhm,
think about like the desperation that these people must feel, to do that, like, to put their kids in this situation.
mhm,
I
mhm,
also think of, like, the Sasha Riley case where, they were adopted into it and
mhm,
adopted for those purposes, and it seems that that's another very common way that kids end up into these situations, that they're
mhm.
adopted into it or they're born into it. Generational incest and things like that, like the Rothschild family.
The
And
lure
so
of
there's
money.
the money. I mean, money
Mhm,
is such a big part of this whole thing, right? Without money, this wouldn't be an issue. I mean, abuse still happens and things like that, but these rings don't happen without
mhm,
excessive money.
mhm. And Aisha's dad had said to me that Jessica had told him that she was making a lot of money and that she had a lot of information. And that was part of
Mhm.
the reason she was making a lot of money. So, um, I mean, the pieces kind of fit. The pieces fit. I had more questions for him. I asked him if Jessica's still alive. He wouldn't answer that question. Um,
He just reached out to you yesterday, so hopefully, maybe, we can find out some more information as if he's willing to talk to you more.
he said we'll
Was
we'll
there
have
was there
another
anything
we'll have
else
another
that he
conversation. He said we'll have another
Right.
conversation. It was a lot. It was a lot to try and unpack. Just the timeline was a lot to try and unpack last night. So
Yeah, and he was the one that, signed over custody to the aunt, correct?
yes,
So he was trying to do the right thing for this daughter who was kind of taken out of his life, out of his
he he
control.
he was trying to, when he signed over custody to the aunt in Maryland. He considered that period him trying to save his daughter's life.
Right. And it's, seeing how common it is for people who have been through extended trauma like this that end up with substance abuse issues or end up ODing or dying by suicide or
Mhm.
dying by suicide.
Mhm.
Um,
Exactly.
the amount of that happens around this kind of thing is just staggering. I mean,
Mhm.
it seems more like much more rare to find somebody who has gone through something like that
Mhm.
hasn't abused drugs or found, had other like legal issues. And a lot of,
Mhm.
a lot of people that have been raised in this, like I think
Mhm.
of George Tonks, he was a Wexner survivor. And Wexner and his crew started abusing Tubby Zonks when he was 12. And so he was raised around
Mhm.
this kind of thing. And so when you're not taught morals and ethics
Mhm.
and, how to do things the socially acceptable legal way, you're
Mhm.
going to find
Mhm.
whatever works and whatever's
Mhm.
around. So I think that's
Mhm.
a lot of the survivors of these types of things end up in, their own kind of issues. And I always refer back to what Maria Farmer said, another one of Wexner and Epstein's victims. That survivors aren't perfect people. They're just normal
Mhm.
people who have survived something terrible.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
unfortunately, a lot of people end up like Aisha and don't
Mhm.
survive. Um,
Mhm.
so I know for myself, one of my goals in covering this kind of stuff is looking at what are the systems that are in place that cause these type of things to happen, and how
Mhm.
can we start to break those systems
Mhm.
down so that we can prevent these types of webs. Obviously abuse is always going to happen, but to prevent this complicated, interconnected, money driven web.
Mhm. That's a big question, and I don't really have an answer for that. I just know the extent of parental involvement in a lot of these cases is really disturbing. Um, and so long as we're a money driven globe, um, that temptation is going to be there. So it's disturbing to say the least.
Well, hopefully, as we cover more cases like this and keep diving in on our own other social media channels, we'll start to kind of see these patterns emerge, and
Hmm.
hopefully we can start to do things to unravel these webs
Hmm.
and prevent this type of thing from going forward.
I would hope so.
So, well, make sure that you guys subscribe, like, and follow us here on Feral America as we attempt to solve the world's problems.
Just a small task, right?
Just little goals here on YouTube.
Little goals, little goals. And you know what? It starts with a little goal, and then it grows into a big goal, and that's good. It's good to have
You
goals. It's
know,
good to have goals.
and one person can make a difference. I think about my own personal experience in protesting, for example. Mark Tremo was one of the people very commonly found in the Epstein files for a lot of
Mhm.
emails back and forth. And
Mhm.
he's a professor at UCLA, and I was
Mhm.
living really close to UCLA. So I made a sign like fire Mark Tremo and put one of his like gross quotes on the other side of the sign and went and stood like by myself and shouted for an hour outside of the music department, which is one of the places he worked there. And now here we are about a month after that initial protest of me out there by myself, and Tremo has stepped down from UCLA, from both departments he was working in, and will not be teaching any more classes. So when people think like, hey, I'm just one person, I can't make a difference. If all of us, one person, go
I
out
agree.
and make
Mm.
our voices heard and team up with other great people, um, we can really make a big difference in this world.
Somebody's got to start that ball rolling, right? So
Well, thank you so much for going over this Jessica Collins story with us,
Mhm.
and I look forward to learning about more in our future Feral America episodes.
We have a lot to learn from each other and from hopefully our audience. And I look forward to this journey with you.
Well, thank you all for joining us. Again, I'm Stevie,
I'm Em.
and this is Feral America. Thanks, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Have a great day.